Welcome to FreightWaves Today. It is Tuesday, July 4th week. This is Super Bowl week. Are you pumped up as I am?
Hey, if you stay ready, Craig, you don't have to get ready.
That's true, and you are certainly ready. I hope our audience is ready. We have a great show set up for today, but there was a breaking news that just hit.
Yes.
This big lawsuit, this big accident that has gotten a lot of attention, known as the Florida U-turn lawsuit.
Yep.
It's the one that has gotten, over media. It's where the guy did not read. There was no U-turn allowed, and he ended up basically going across the median, and unfortunately, the passenger car hit him.
Did not stop, yep.
Did not stop, and he's now in prison. C.H. Robinson was sued in this lawsuit, but they weren't even involved.
No, weren't even involved.
They were not the broker of record. They had nothing to do with it, and they've come out and said publicly, like, look, we haven't even worked with this carrier for many, many years. Why are we getting sued? And this highlights in a SCOTUS world, in a post-Montgomery world, just how much legal expense and distractions are going to be involved. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that the plaintiff's attorneys sued C.H. Robinson when they weren't even the broker of record.
Well, they said that apparently they didn't, quote unquote, vet them properly. I mean,
but they weren't even involved.
That's devil's advocate.
They're not even but here's the thing is, like, it's one thing if they were involved.
Right.
But they're not involved. Like, do your job, plaintiff's attorneys. Like, you get paid a ridiculous amount of money. You're actually scum of the earth. But, like, why be cockroaches and do these things and do something irresponsible like that?
Well, you know how it goes. I mean, they're looking to, get what everybody's looking after, which is
But
money.
there's nothing there. You got to prove damages, and they didn't do anything. It's one thing to use the legal systems for plaintiffs' attorneys to, quote unquote, make trucking safer, which,
Yes.
I don't know if that's whether they are making trucking safer. They certainly are a tax on society. But if they are going to argue that they are credible people,
Yes.
and they're going to argue that their point is they're making it safer, then sue the right people and don't do these innocuous, tortured lawsuits of going after companies that aren't involved.
So where does this go next? That's my question to you.
Well, obviously, C.H.
lawyer,
Robinson had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
They were not involved at all. And this is a part that, like, when a party that's involved ends up getting sued, if they have some responsibility, it's sort of, and we've talked about this ad nauseum about the Montgomery
100%.
issue and how this is going to expose brokers to liability. C.H. Robinson had nothing to do with it.
Zero.
The plaintiffs' attorneys did not do their job. And I don't know. We should get Darren Caputo on here to see what does this mean, if you're getting sued and you're not involved, like, that's just stupid.
Two things that Darren knows about is the law, one, and disc golf for two.
Have you seen him get his disc
Oh,
golf?
yeah, we went disc golf.
We should get his disc golf. But during break, we're gonna go right to the news and headlines. This was just breaking.
Of course,
We're gonna get right
of
to headlines.
course.
I'm gonna ask him during our headline break, like, what does this even mean? So let's get to headlines.
We kick things off in South Texas, where developers are building a massive new rail infrastructure project designed to transform Laredo from purely a trucking gateway into a true multimodal freight hub. Following authorization from the U.S. Surface Transportation Board on June 17th, Krause Development and Iron Horse Resources plan to begin construction of the 2.6-mile Laredo Gateway Industrial Railway later this year, with rail service expected to begin about a year after construction starts. The Short Line Railroad will connect Gateway International Rail Park directly to Union Pacific's Laredo subdivision, serving approximately 1,900 rail-served acres within the sprawling 3,314-acre Gateway Industrial Park. Laredo's two border bridges currently process between 14,000 and 18,000 commercial trucks every day. And in April, the crossing handled $33.35 billion in trade, accounting for nearly 39% of all U.S.-Mexico trade by value. Developers estimate the rail operation will initially have capacity for more than 12,000 rail cars annually, potentially representing the equivalent of roughly 62,000 truckloads. Over in the technology sector, Trimble is aggressively expanding its product lineup with a brand new transportation management system built directly from its massive European acquisition. the company has officially launched Trimble TMS for shippers, a product that grew out of Trimble's 2022 acquisition of Europe's Transporion for just under $2 billion. Rather than forcing shippers to rip out existing systems, the new TMS offering uses a modular cafeteria-style approach where customers can bolt on specific features like freight procurement, rate management, or carrier tendering to their current infrastructure and only pay for what they need. The product represents a convergence of Transporion's European platform with Trimble's existing U.S. carrier-focused TMS capabilities, integrating tools like Copilot and the PC Miler Route Planner into an agile, AI-integrated system that can coexist with other TMS providers. Finally, a workforce development proposal in Florida has hit a major roadblock at the governor's desk. Governor Ron DeSantis has vetoed a bill that would have allowed commercial driver's license training for a narrow segment of state prisoners, specifically nonviolent inmates who have 2 years or less remaining on their sentence. The bill, which passed both houses of the Florida legislature with no opposition, was part of a larger vocational training measure that would have permitted the state's Department of Transportation to fund a wider array of workforce development programs. In his veto letter, DeSantis said the program would be unnecessarily burdensome to the Department of Corrections, which would need to supply personnel to monitor inmates taking the CDL training, and also cited significant public safety concerns by authorizing incarcerated individuals to operate commercial vehicles in public thoroughfares.
So, look, this lawsuit, I'd say I'm shocked because plaintiffs' attorneys do stupid things.
100%. They mess up all the time.
But so I asked Darren Caputo during our news segment, what happens if you name a party? You can't sue them for, for naming you incorrectly.
No.
It's just very easy to get it thrown out. The problem is you've got to go hire Florida counsel to file with the court that, hey, we're not involved. It's still a distraction.
That is
dumb.
100% a distraction.
Plaintiffs' attorneys, absolutely irresponsible here. And the problem is, like C.H. Robinson, when they make a mistake, that is the cost of doing business, and they gotta deal with it, right?
No doubt.
But when they're not involved, they are unfairly getting dragged through the mud. It's just dumb.
That is dumb. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about it's like, let's establish.
Is this a Florida problem?
This is a
Florida man problem.
Florida man problem. Who brokered the load? That's all we need to know. Was this direct?
They were not involved. They haven't done business with this carrier since 2024.
Yeah.
So they had nothing to do with it.
So now it's just like, all right, like let's find out who is actually
if the broker that's involved, maybe they're going to see the lawsuit and maybe they'll be named in it. But just like this is just.
I'm interested to see how
this is frustrating.
No, for sure.
Because it distracts from the real, like when there are real issues in our industry.
Yes.
This is dragging. Like C.H. Robinson isn't perfect.
No,
by any means. They're the largest broker. It does beg the question, because you're big, because C.H. Robinson is the biggest, are they going to be named in a bunch of lawsuits from dumbass plaintiffs' attorneys that don't know what they're doing?
Yes, they are, because of the tree and the limbs that they are.
Everyone's like,
attached
hey,
to.
we'll just put C.H. Robinson
It's
in
like,
it.
give or take, yeah, we have some affiliation with C.H. Robinson because XYZ Carrier worked with C.H. Robinson.
Dumb.
That's all it is.
Dumb plaintiffs.
You want to stick in the state of Florida and talk about this?
We can. DeSantis is CDL. What we got here?
How do you feel about this? With him, I mean, it passed both the House as well as Senate, right? So this is good, right? In terms of the actual bill passing both areas.
Well, he was basically this has to do with CDL issuance and
with ex-convicts.
Yeah, but he basically didn't sign it.
He was like, no, this is not.
He doesn't, because I think there's so the whole movement on this is trying to lower the barriers to entry, and I think there's been an issue and a trend line where the industry has wanted lower barriers to entry for drivers coming in.
Right.
And I think DeSantis says, look, I don't want ex-convicts. Look, I have mixed views on this.
I do too.
And I'll tell you why I have mixed views on this, is because the drug war has unfairly, I'm not someone, as I get older and older and have younger and younger kids, I'm far more into, I think there should be consequences to drugs. I used to argue drug legalization, but we've seen what's happened in places like Washington and California. The problem is a lot of people, when they're younger, are incarcerated, and then they can't get jobs. And I think it's ultimately, there have been very successful cases of people that are ex-cons that have been very successful truck drivers it's an interesting thing because it's a bigger question about society. Like, what happens when you get convicted and you're in prison and you get out? How are you supposed to work?
So I worked with this nonprofit here in Tennessee called Project Return, all based off of recidivism and basically activating ex-felons to get back into the workforce. So I'm very passionate about this issue, which is why I wanted to talk about it. I'm very split, just like you, because I understand, all right, like barriers to entry, but also I understand opportunity for those that have made mistakes that have shown an impeccable track record to get their life back on track. So I get DeSantis in his position saying, hey, like, I don't think this is a good idea. We already have the non-domiciled issue. Let's kind of lock this thing in. But also, I think there does need to be opportunities for those that want to get.
So what do you do with this? Like if
it's Malcolm Harris in a seat, if it's me making this decision?
I think if you're very empathetic to this situation. What do you think should be done?
I think I have to roll with DeSantis on this for right now.
You think not letting?
I don't think
why?
So. Just because of the state of trucking today.
You think it's such a disaster?
I think it is
in terms of the safety, security, and economic crisis.
To the point where I would almost even pause CDL issuance until 2027.
Oh man, there's an idea. Should we pause CDL issuance? We'd love to hear from you. You can go to hit us up on X. Tell us whether you think we should pause CDL issuance. That's a really bold idea.
I mean,
that totally cuts up. I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, look, I think if you are qualified as a driver, and you follow the standards and you have the training, you should be able to work as a CDL. We need drivers. We just need properly qualified drivers.
I just think it's almost like a sports team. It's like, yeah, all right, let's stop. Let's put the pause on things. Let's
things
look
are
at
bad.
Let's look at it. Yeah, let's clean house. Let's establish what we have, and then let's bring in better players.
We have a lot of issues in our industry. Issues of finding drivers is going to become an issue. We've talked about it frequently on this show about just the barriers of entry and how difficult it is. But let's get to our first guest.
Yeah, definitely.
We have Jonah McIntire. He's the Chief Platform Officer at Trimble. Jonah, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. This is fun to listen to you guys' conversation. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's never a shortage of news in freight, as you know, Jonah. Trimble is a massive organization that really has a very wide breadth of offerings and technology platforms. What exactly, as Chief Platform Officer, what exactly do you do? What does that role mean?
All the people who work in product or engineering report to me. Basically, it's almost half of the folks of the headcount that are in the transportation segment. So if you're making products, whether that's designing them, conceptualizing them, strategizing them, or building them in a coding sense or maintaining them, then you're in my area.
So AI is obviously taking the world by storm, we'll say, and this is an area, I mean, Trimble's got an enormous amount of data, probably and arguably sitting on one of the largest data sets in the entire industry. I believe the number is something like 65% of all OTR capacity. It has a Trimble product, everything from your Trimble Maps products to your TMSs to your well, formerly telematics devices, your ELD devices are now part of the Platform Science merger. What exactly does that mean for Trimble in terms of this mountain of data and systems that you guys are sitting on as you look at an AI agentic world?
Yeah, so if AI can sort of like a genie coming out of a bottle, if you have a coherent idea, you can have software created that does it. AI lowers really rapidly the cost and the timeline to get software made, but software still is encumbered by needing to have data, like accurate data about the world. And so this is something you can't make up. You also need to insert it into real operations. So there's these kind of choke points of, you can have great software, but it needs to be deployed into cabs or it needs to be employed in the back office. And then network, think about something like LinkedIn or Facebook or FreightWaves for that matter. You could make a really slick website pretty quickly, but getting a bunch of people to use it and all your business partners in particular to use it, that's the network problem. So those are the advantages we have coming into the AI age. It still is incumbent on us to make proper, attractive, desirable AI products that take advantage of those aspects.
Now, Jonah, at times, Trimble, a very acquisitive company, it's one of the primary growth engines of the Trimble model is through
Yeah,
acquisition. That is both great because you get scale, but it also creates a lot of integration issues. Is that
yeah.
becoming easier in an AI world where you're able to bring in some of these new platforms and create better systems transfers between them and make sure the systems are talking to one another?
Yeah, it changes the equation quite a bit. So the post-acquisition integration can indeed be faster, but it also raises the bar pretty substantially on what are you actually buying? What's attractive about what you're buying? So if you're buying a clever piece of software or a clever piece of even hardware, like a clever piece of kit, that's just worth less now than it was in the past. But if you're buying a network, if you're buying a trove of data, if you're buying kind of like a distributed system that's out there in the world, and you can now inject like new intelligence into it, those are the things that have risen in value rather than declined in value.
Now, one of the things that Wall Street has been, we'll call it brutal in some sense, or at least has really punished a lot of the traditional software stocks in the last couple of years. Trimble is certainly not an exception to
Yeah,
that. I think the concern, or at least Wall Street's perspective, is that AI is going to replace systems of record and really impact it. That seems a little disingenuous, to at least in the freight market, because these systems are so critical. And I can't see, I mean, like we still have AS400s that probably
yeah.
run something like 80% of the freight that is in the market is run on a traditional green scene system that is 20 years old on an IBM mainframe. What is your perspective on that as someone that's dealing with both the public company element, and I know you can't talk about sort of forward-looking statements, but you can talk about your perspective as it looks in terms of your role at Trimble, in terms of the perception of Wall Street and how they're looking at these systems of records?
Yeah, I think that there is some truth to the fact that a certain kind of software business is of less value now. If your primary moat was, well, we have software that took us a long time to build, and that's why nobody can compete with us. So something like SAP is like took us a long time to build. It's very huge, and no one's going to compete with us because they can't, build it, or it wouldn't make economic sense for them to try to catch up. Well, it's like, well, now you can catch up. That's not that big of a deal. If your primary moat is we're already in a bunch of places and it's hard to change systems. I mean that part, it hasn't gotten better. To your reference earlier, there's a lot of people hold on to old technologies simply because it's painful to change them. So that those elements, the data elements, brand also, like you can produce some pretty whizzy technology with a small team, but you got to wonder, like, is that supplier actually going to be there in a couple of years? So those are elements I think haven't diminished in value, or maybe have even gone up in value. And it's tough for markets to figure out what's the blend of that. With somebody like Trimble, surely we do have software that falls in the first category, and we also have a lot of stuff that falls in the beneficial category. And so it's hard to sort those all out. I also think it's interesting to see at this moment there's also a kind of like a high perfection of software businesses. That's why you can see startups that take the playbook of how to make a high profit, high growth, software business, but they don't need to hire as many people, and they can build the software super fast. So you've got these hyper growth businesses. I just suspect that they're kind of like a sugar high. There's not a lot to prevent them from also being then disrupted by the same forces that let them grow really fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, AI wrappers,
Yeah,
2 years ago, some of the voice technologies and trucking, these technologies that were
yeah,
using some of the AI underlying technology, sort of showed up and had the advantage because it was still a new technology. It was hard for people to work on. They weren't familiar with it. With Claude and other
yeah,
AI platforms, it's incredibly easy where I wouldn't say anybody could do it, but it's not hard. The gap is incredibly
yeah,
easy and accessible. It puts a lot of pressure. But one thing I know from running a data business, I think one of the most empowering things is we're sitting on a mine, just absolute vast amount of data here at Sonar,
yeah,
and we're able to do visualization layers, present stories to the data, present new ways to visualize it, new ways to make it prescriptive that we've never been able to do, that used to take months to ship, and now you're shipping potentially within hours. It's not changing the data. The data is the value proposition, but the visual layers are incredibly easy to ship. I imagine for a company like Trimble, who's just sitting on a absolute mine of data, this is an empowering technology for you guys.
Oh, 100%. But I mean, plus, you're probably too discreet to raise this, but I think that, particularly in the US, there's a lot of reputation around our TMSs are kind of legacy. They're old TMSs. And that's true. I mean, we have, for example, a product called Innovative, which is arguably the first TMS, commercially available TMS in the world. This thing's from the 60s, right? Deregulation in the US. It would be easier to start a fire department today than it was to start a trucking company, like a commercial trucking company, the way we would talk about it in the 60s. You had to prove that the community needed you in the same way that you need a fire department or something. It was very much non-commercial. And that, you look at that TMS, the fact that it survived all these decades is incredible. Like so many of the companies that it was up against competition, they're no longer here. But you still, as you said, you look at it, it's a mainframe based system. It looks old, and now with AI, we have this ability to rejuvenate and like reinvigorate our kind of legacy applications for our customers and produce these totally modern experiences. They look like anything a startup would produce in 2026, but they don't require any change really to your base operation. You don't have to migrate data or anything. So that's a huge benefit. It's to your point. It's like the data. The data is the value for the customer. That their customers' data is still there. It's still in the same place, but you modernize everything around it in situ without having to lift them up to a new system, and that's just a huge benefit for us.
Yeah, but in fairness to Innovative, I mean, they were running Swift's entire fleet of 20,000
Yeah,
trucks on this old school
yeah,
mainframe that Ernie Betancourt had barely spent any time developing before he sold it to Trimble. I don't know
yeah,
if Swift, I don't know if Night Swift is still operating on the old Innovative system, but when I was at US Express, we had something like 300 engineers that were working on some technology that we built in-house. And you had Swift that had like two people that
yeah,
were running on this like old
yeah,
school. And I think one of the interesting things that I remember when I was in trucking is that the disruption, US Press was constantly deploying new code. It was really
mhm,
Schneider and US Press were sort of the two big asset carriers that were building their own technology in-house. The
yeah,
problem was anytime you did a system of record change, you changed out a fuel card, you changed out an ELD device, it was disruptive to the operation. Ultimately,
yeah.
trucking companies just want to book freight.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I always is in my mind, that the sort of the peak, the apex of great products in our space is not that they're flashy and they sort of draw your attention and you're wowed and wooed by them. It's a bit more like clean drinking water. It's a miracle that everywhere we go in our environment, we have clean drinking water just right there, and it's so cheap, it's free, and you never think about it, and you don't have to like carry water with you everywhere, or a water sanitation kit or something. Like, that's a miracle of civilization. But its apex is that we forget about it because it just works. Same thing with like trash collection, huge logistics problem, but it works so well and so cheap, we just don't think about it. That's really how these systems ought to be. They ought to be so good, so reliable, so smooth, and so cheap that they're like the water, network or trash system, where they just get out of your way and let you focus on, to your point, like operations and moving freight, hiring drivers and keeping them happy, and all those other elements.
I love that analogy, Jonah. I want to ask. There's this, I guess, quote from you, or something that I heard about a job apocalypse.
Yeah,
You said that AI could potentially create a job apocalypse when it comes to
yeah,
logistics. Do you still
yeah,
believe that? And what does this look like? I guess in let's just say 5 years.
yeah. I love that. I said this in pass. Well, not in passing. I said it in answer to a question. It became like the hallmark next to my name for a while, in what, November, October, November, something like that. then it quieted down. Then now everybody's like referring to it because it's coming to pass. Yeah, like if you do a job, you think about this for a second. Like you do a job that's mediated through a screen, like all the data input and output goes through a screen. Like a lot of back office operations and logistics are mediated through a screen. I don't really see a lot of reasons why those can't be displaced or eliminated by AI. And what's left is often a lower paying coordinator role, like a so it's some jobs get eliminated, some get you know devalued. There's a maybe a thinner level at the very top where you have leaders who are kind of AI bosses over a large number of AI. But that the you do the math, and it's not like there's some law of physics that says that the amount of money distributed to the staff has to remain constant or something. Like it will just be cheaper to have a back office because you'll need less people, and the remaining people may get paid a little more, they may get paid less, doesn't matter. But it's not like you redistributed all the salaries. So yeah, I stand behind this. I should say that, like, I don't think that means all these people are just going to go sit on the curb and like ask for handouts and be jobless. There's a concurrent rise in things like solo entrepreneurs and or just normal entrepreneurs or people joining, moving to different sectors of the economy that are more dynamic. Like this is the creative destruction of capitalism. It just is the case. Like think of all the typists and all the other jobs in the past that got eliminated. It's not like all those people just are outside waiting for food handouts or something. The economy moves on.
No, it definitely does move on. Now, I guess a follow up to that is you kind of mentioned it, but the human aspect, where do you see the human being most important? Just for my personal curiosity, because this is really fascinating to me for sure.
Yeah, so I think where we're at with AI is that it finishes the sentence, but it doesn't really know where to start it. So you think about it as like this incredible autocomplete. Mentioned Claude Code a moment ago, and Cursor and Codex and all these options. Someone who isn't technical but has an idea, and as long as the idea is consistent and complete, they can make some software. And same thing could be said for, they can make a piece of content, they can make a website, they can make imagery. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can make. But what AI hasn't been able to do so far, satisfactory, is to have the initial idea to begin with, right? So the kind of the king or the queen needs to know what they want before their people can go make it. And the people now are largely becoming AI, but someone's got to pick up like the initial spark, the moment where they have an idea, a good idea about what they want. And that's at the level of entrepreneurship. It's all the way down to individual tasks, like what should AI be working on in the next moment. That's still a human led decision. For practical reasons, like AI is not good enough for it yet, but also for almost like moral level questions. Like we want humans at the steering wheel of our companies and our industry. We don't want that to be a black box right now.
No, we
So,
do
so
not.
Jonah, one of the sort of industry issues that have been brought up when you mentioned Trimble as a business. So you have a
Yeah.
wide variety of businesses you guys have acquired, different software platforms. A lot of them just trying to get them to talk to one another.
Yeah.
And at times there was a lot of like customer frustration. You mentioned innovative. You could go to Maddox, you go to IDSC. You guys have bought a lot of business. In fact, my co-founder at Sonar and at FreightWaves was actually Ben Murphy, that sold a business to
Yeah.
Trimble or
Yeah.
TMW that is now Trimble.
Yeah.
One of the sort of issues was with all these acquisitions, you guys have this vast amount of different service requirements and different platforms. As someone that's designing the future of Trimble's platform, how is AI enabling you guys to serve your customers better, potentially on those legacy platforms, and move their businesses forward?
Yeah, besides modernizing the point solutions themselves, another one of our initiatives is to establish a common platform. So, my thinking on this is you have to walk a line. You have to be careful. What we want is maximum interoperability with minimum interdependence. Like I don't want people to have to buy their entire tech stack from us if they want to buy anything from us. I don't want to create this sort of like we point to something like the Apple ecosystem where everything just works together. Well, that's when it works, right? That's great when it works, but I think there are a lot of businesses that they would rather make those decisions one by one. They don't. They want the interoperability without being required to go all in. And so, what the way we think about this is we have a minimum common platform. There's elements there that I feel like every customer would just expect if they have one product and they try to add a second one, those elements remain. So things like your master data, setting up your business, your connections to the outside world, those sort of things should be common. And then everything else doesn't have to be common. So one of the things I let be different is like look and feel. I have the sense of these point solutions mostly have their own users. They're not hopping around from one product to another product all day long. If the look and feel is a little different, like that's okay as long as it's optimal for that point solution. I don't really see why the back office, invoice to cash team needs to have the same look and feel as the workflow solution that's given out to drivers in cab. Just doesn't seem to be a priority to me. But the fact that they can talk to each other, that's pretty important.
Yeah, AI can do that really well. In fact, one of the frustrations that I think customers of any, Tom McLeod, who's a competitor to Trimble,
For sure.
the worst thing you could ever ask him for was a custom screen. Like you didn't do that. And I think there was some frustration probably at Trimble in the old days. So, you went and asked, innovated. Now this is the box. This is what you buy.
We have.
But AI enables you to build these custom experiences and really. Yeah. One of the problems of buying third-party software, and Salesforce is sort of the classic example of this, is you buy this massively big CRM that has all these reports, and you can't find what you want to find for that specific function because it's, there's 100 other reports that have been built by the clients. One of the great things about AI is building custom-built or providing custom-built experiences for the user.
100%. That's why our we actually just released a new TMS for the like small medium-sized carrier market particularly in the US, and it's predicated on a build to order model. So the old world would be like code's expensive to write. Man, once we write code, we really want to sell that code as many times as possible because it doesn't cost us anything more to sell it again. So we make high margin. And you would kind of try to convince customers or prospective customers that they don't really need to do work the way that they think they need to do it, that actually our other customers accomplish the same thing this other way, which is another way of saying like, please don't make us write any more code, just buy the code we already wrote. And the new world is like the unit economics flip. It's probably cheaper and like more effective for us to just make what you want. So if you're like, hey, we move around like chocolate, and it's really important that every time the truck comes to a stop, there's like a check on the refrigerator unit, and it's humming away properly, and we'd be like, okay, well, like you want it, we'll make it. We'll just make it for you. And at a very attractive price point, frankly lower than what you would have had a normal TMS for a couple of years ago, we can just make what people want. It's a beautiful, I really love this moment where we're much more in tune with actually what customers want, because we're not trying to convince them to reuse what we already built. And it kind of goes, it brings us back to a phase where we're instead of like enamored by the repeatability of SaaS, we're more like engaged with the specificity of customer need.
So Jonah, do you see a world? I mean, Trimble's historically been an enterprise. You certainly have some down market products, but really an enterprise business is really the bread and butter of Trimble. Does AI enable you guys to go down market to much smaller customers because the customer acquisition costs are not as intense and customer servicing costs are not as intense?
Yeah, I think it does. At least that's our premise with releasing this new TMS, which is called Trimble TMS. The concept here is that this build to order model in particular caters to someone who they either have a TMS, but for whatever reason, they've outgrown it. They really need something new. But more often than not, these people are kind of net new. This is the first time they're buying a TMS. They may have strong ideas about what they want. They also, want something that was very price attractive and very malleable because their business is growing. So they want to be able to adjust adjust the TMS rather than having to adjust to the TMS. I think these are great. It's a great direction for us to take because it combines our benefits of scale of being able to have a dedicated applied AI group, which is like significant. Our applied AI group is very large as a resource pool, but then it's applied to a segment of the market that would not usually be able to get that kind of scale.
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing. And we've seen it at Sonar. I mean, we used to focus only in enterprise. We released Blue to Blue, which is our consumer mobile app. We've released our Market Monitor, which is, again, just a executive summary. And then we have the new Quick Rates, all enabled because AI has enabled us to go to market, build it, and go to market much more efficient. It's a really remarkable time. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch. Startups have lived and really made their play on serving the smallest clients because that was an area, it's the old innovator's dilemma. It's an area that Trimble was focused just solving your enterprise customers' problems. It's going to be really interesting to watch this sort of down long tail business.
Oh, no doubt.
Where companies like Trimble are like, hey, let's go after that. And now you got the best of the best in terms of application. You get the best of the best in terms of resources and go-to-market expertise. It's going to be a real challenge for some of these startups.
It absolutely is.
But they're going to learn a lot. I mean, the great things about startups is they're constantly doing things. Trimble can watch it too. So this is it's a really interesting world.
Exactly. The dynamicism is it's good for everybody, basically. It's good for the industry to have that.
Well, I think there's going to be plenty of jobs because all these companies are going to be constantly creating new product offerings and going in new directions. Jonah, really appreciate you joining us. We'd love to have you back. And
thanks.
We'll be back right after these messages. Thank you. Stay with us.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited, and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. we are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Back to FreightWaves Today. It has been some great conversations, Craig.
Yeah, look, I thought Jonah was great. I'm really intrigued by this idea of a company with the scale of Trimble, all the systems that they have, all the data. There's a mountain of data. And they've historically have had this massive amount of data, and getting it into customers' hands has been, it's been a big lift. We struggle with it. The great thing about AI is that is exactly what AI can do, is it can create these fantastic visual layers, and I'm curious where they take it.
I'm curious where they take it as well. Speaking of data, let's talk more about the data and all things when it comes to capacity now. Let's get to it.
Porter, you're paying much higher spot rates for capacity to bring in a container from China to the United States. Spot rates have jumped from $1,800 back in March to over $6,100 today. That is the daily spot rate from China to the U.S. West Coast, the most important trade lane in international container movements. And it's a reflection of really the pricing power that the international container lines happen. They took rates way up when there was the Iran conflict, largely under the guise of fuel, and also just anytime there's a conflict, the container lines are not shy about implementing higher surcharges. But one of the ironies of all of this is that the international container ships coming out of China to the United States were not being disrupted. It's not like they were going through the Middle East. They're going directly across the Pacific. So this is really a reflection of the pricing power that the international ship lines have over the U.S. import market and ultimately over U.S. consumers. Now, some of this is fuel related, no doubt. These big ships consume a lot, and I mean a lot, of diesel. They burn a lot of it. So there is some element of it in just higher fuel prices is showing up. And those, while they have internationally cooled, we've seen the futures contracts in both Brent and WTI have come down significantly since the sort of maximum pressure on oil and global oil supplies. $115 now down to about $70 a barrel. It still is something that the market is working out. What I think is interesting is that these high spot rates is not a reflection of higher demand. In fact, demand is off quite sizably from where we were a year ago. Now, in fairness, the reason that demand is off today versus where we were a year ago is largely related to the Liberation Day chaos that really started in April. And, we had a collapse in imports into the United States due to that. Imports out of China dropped something like 50%. And then we saw this massive surge. And that's what, when we look at year-over-year comps, that's where we were a year ago, and we're off that number. Today, we are looking at more normal volumes, but it's not really something that should suggest that spot rates should be up 300%. And while fuel represents a significant portion of that increase, it doesn't explain everything. The bottom line that you need to know about international container markets, it's very different than trucking, is just how concentrated the power is among the international ship lines. It's a cartel. There's no doubt about it. The top 10 ocean carriers have approximately 90% of the capacity in the global market. To put that in perspective, OPEC, prior to a couple of months ago when we had some OPEC members leave, OPEC controlled about 35% of global oil supplies. And it's a cartel. No doubt that it has the power, has traditionally had the power to manipulate fuel and oil prices. It's the same thing with the international ocean container business, except they have so much more power because they control 90% of it. So what they do when they see prices start to slow down is they pull capacity out of the market. They're also allowed to coordinate their schedules, which is kind of ridiculous because they can manipulate the market by schedule coordination. They say it's there to be more efficient. But the reality is these things called alliances allow them to basically manage capacity. And ultimately, if you want to control price, you take out the supply, you take out capacity, and you're going to see much higher prices, and that's exactly what happens. Also, one thing to keep in mind is the international container lines. None of the top 10 international container lines, in fact, you have to go to like number 29 before you see a U.S. container ship company, but none of the top 10 are U.S.-owned companies. They're owned by foreign companies, foreign entities. Some of them, including Costco, is owned by the Chinese government, connections to the, our potentially our enemy, if you call it, or at least our rival. And it's just something that you keep in mind, because ultimately U.S. consumers, U.S. importers are paying higher container rates, but these are not really helping U.S. businesses. It's a tax that we pay, and it's something that I've always had an issue with, that really we don't control our own international ocean capacity, and therefore sort of subject to the whims and the decisions of our global competitors. Now, one of the things that I think is important is, because we're not seeing a massive surge in demand, even though we're seeing recovery in the market from where we were just a couple of months ago, really coming out of Chinese New Year, we're not seeing a massive surge. It means that really the market is operating pretty rationally. There's no panic that's in the market, the international container market, and therefore it's not going to flood us full and have a backlog of containers that hit the shore and all of a sudden cause problems. It will probably create some level of inflation and transportation inflation. And really, shippers are getting hit from all angles. They're getting hit from the container prices that are accelerating. They're getting hit from warehouse rates that are going up. These REITs are increasing rates as demand fills up, as warehouses fill up. And they're getting hit from trucking increases, as well as fuel surcharges that are playing into that. So it's really a difficult market for anyone to maintain a budget due to all the pricing pressures that are happening in the freight market, domestic and internationally. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the domestic market. It's July 4th week. We've talked a lot about it on FreightWaves Today. The fact that this is a week where we should see significant increase in tender rejections and significant increase in spot rates. Now, yesterday, we saw a little bit of cooling, not much. We're well into 17%, near 17.5%. Cooled a little bit overnight, not much. But really, Monday's the softest day of the week, so you would expect that. And spot rates cooled a little bit by a couple pennies. Again, very small softness. But as we head into the rest of the week, this is the time we will expect, especially as we get through Wednesday and into Thursday, spot rates are going to go absolutely hyperbolic, and tender rejections are going to do the same. And the reason that this is important is that RXO has set themselves up to be the on-demand call. So if you're routing guide, if you're a shipper and your routing guide's falling apart, or your normal carriers don't have capacity because their drivers are off duty or taking home for the holidays, and you've got those last-minute loads, RXO is there to help you. They want to be there. That's really what they've done, is set up a hotline to assist you as you see your routing guides fail. They're there to serve you. They're there to help you. That's why they've set up capacity now, and that's why they are supporting FreightWaves in this and sponsoring this, to remind their shippers that they are there. If your routing guides fail, if your normal carriers fail, they have a lot of resources. Not only do they tap into the over-the-road for-hire market, but they actually tap into the private fleet market as well, which is a really unique feature of RXO's capacity, is they are looking at the private fleet capacity, which is approximately as big as the over-the-road for-hire market. And frankly, it doesn't have the regulatory concerns or issues that you typically see in for-hire, because the shippers that offer private fleet capacity tend to be far more compliant. They're not hiring the non-domiciled CDL drivers and the companies, and not hiring companies that are non-compliant. These are privately owned fleets, and that's a big source of RXO's capacity. So if you get into trouble and you can't find a truck, RXO wants to remind you that they're there for you, and that's why they've set up a capacity hotline for you. And you can go to rxo.com to find out more.
Well, look, I think it's fireworks week. It's Independence. It's July 4th. This is where all the fireworks.
Perfect storm. Perfect storm.
There's going to be a lot of routing guide failures out there, and if you need help, if you need a truck, you need a 911 operator.
Yeah.
That's what RXO wants to be.
100%. Talk to me a little bit about, real quick, that private fleet aspect that you just had in the back half of capacity now. Why are they so important, given the aspect that we're in right
Well,
now?
they don't. So private fleets are typically larger companies
Right.
that have a fleet set aside
Of course.
to run their core operations. So they're not there to make money. Like they're there to make sure. Typically, the reason you have a private fleet is to ensure service. So you'll see it in the carpet mills down in Dalton, not too far from here.
Yeah.
Like Shaw and Mohawk have private fleets. You see it in food service, PepsiCo. You see it in places like Walmart. So they use those private fleets, and what enables them to do is they don't hire the non-compliant drivers because these companies are huge. Like they can't hire people that don't have work registrations and are properly vetted. So RXO have a core part of their capacity comes from the private fleet segment, which gives them an edge over brokers that aren't using those private fleets.
Gives them an edge for sure. Ark, so we'll hear from them, of course, in a little bit. But coming up, a Dallas truck service team just punched their ticket to Sweden, and you're going to hear all about it. This story is next, only on FreightWaves Today.
It's National Safety Month, which makes this a great time to ask how your fleet can prevent more accidents. Samsara AI detects risks in real time, giving teams more visibility into what's happening on the road and more context to coach drivers before risky moments become incidents. Fleets using Samsara Complete AI Safety Solution have reduced crash rates by nearly 75%. See the data behind the results in the Samsara Safety Report at samsara.com/freightwaves.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara Driving Coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. I gotta say something.
Yeah.
So I had the chance last week to go to the Samsara event and saw this great technology that they were releasing. They had this 360 camera, which I really want as a pilot in my airplane.
I was
because
gonna
it was pretty
say.
epic. And now I'm not using this for safety purposes, but that's what it's intended for. It's for
Absolutely.
safety and compliance purposes. I just thought it was cool. It was a really pretty cool. They also had this label that they built, which has a battery built into the label. Really remarkable technology. But one of the things that kept happening, and I hear people say it, is Samsara, the name, people say Samsara. I kept saying it. Julie had to correct me. I finally realized you have to say it like a pirate. It's Samsara.
Arg.
It's the R. And then once I said it's pirate talk, I then got it and I never messed it up again. But I had a couple of people come up to me like, it's Samsara. And then I stopped wanting to say it because I was like, I'm going to say it wrong.
It's going to revert back. I've done the same thing, but it is Samsara.
Say it like a pirate.
Samsara.
And you'll get it right. You'll never mess up. All right, next up, let's go to Sweden. Well, we're not going to Sweden, but Dayan is going to Sweden. Can you take us? Welcome to FreightWaves Today, Dayan. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'll take you, no problem.
Let's do it. What are we going to do there? Like you've got this great thing. Volvo has invited you to come over. You're part of the Vista World Championship. What is that?
For us, Vista represents the ultimate blend of technical expertise and collaboration. Achieving a top 3 finish, approximately 200 teams, is a significant milestone for us. My personal journey with Vista spans on 2 continents, including representing Volvo Bulgaria in Europe and Bruckner Truck Sales in North America. For us, qualifying the final round is the way to show how good we are with what we're doing here. A total of 3 teams from our shop qualified to the semifinals, and this is showing out significance of Vista to our organization and our shop. It is.
All right, so you've gone through a couple of different sequences and you qualified, and then you ended up getting into the regionals. You won that. Now you're headed to Sweden. What do you expect to find when you're in Sweden? What is this championship actually consist of? How do you win? Malcolm and I were talking earlier. We assumed it was like a speed thing, like NASCAR, but that's not what I read. What exactly do you need to do to win this?
It's basically just go and fix some issues that they represent to us there. We actually don't know. We never been. So with what I know is like multiple teams from around the globe with different places there. They give us technical issues to resolve, and who gets fastest and more accurate, he wins.
So, a question from me is, between now and September, what does life look like for you and the rest of the team? I mean, are we putting in 2-a-days? I mean, what is this going to look like? Because I know there's a lot that's going to come with this.
So Volvo North America is organizing a boot camp in Greensboro for us to go there and get more familiar with the European product, which will be part of most of the questions will be covering the European version of Volvo, which we are not familiarized with it. So we need to, they're going to give us a hint how we troubleshoot, how we finding information, what specific places the information will be. So we'll try to compete in the global stage with all other service teams from around the globe.
Man, it sort of makes me think of Dayan is like in Siberia running logs like Rocky.
Sure.
But I don't think that's what it works. I don't think he would win this competition by training like Rocky.
No way.
Dayan, what is it? Is it learning the technical stuff that you need to do to be successful? Obviously, brushing up and just really being knowledgeable. Is that how you end up winning this competition?
That's exactly what it is. It's like knowledge of the product that we fixing, diagnosing, and repairing every day, basically. Like I said, we had 3 teams in the semifinals, so that's showing how good we are here in Dallas.
So are you working on, when you guys go to Sweden, will there be cab over trucks that are the European style cab over trucks, or are these American, the conventionals that you typically would see?
That will be a European cab over trucks.
Oh man, I love those.
I mean,
they go hard.
Go hard.
I am biased. I think they look better.
For sure.
It drives me crazy though, when I see a company put out a cab over, like a European truck, on an American article.
It drives me nuts.
It is like, no, that is not an American truck.
No.
But I think they go hard. I think they're the best looking trucks on the road. I love those cab overs. What is different about a cab over than a conventional?
Well, you have multiple differences. You have European market move differently on the emission levels than U.S. market. I worked in Europe for Volvo Bulgaria for 3 years, and I'm 15 years here in North America working for Bruckner Truck Sales, and I can tell that there is a big difference on the emission levels. There is a big difference on the electronics. There is a big difference on complexity. Right now with the VM4 in US market, Volvo get their, basically they lowering the gap between European and American product. So we're more familiarized with those systems, that being in Europe from probably 7-8 years.
Yeah, there's been, there's a lot of noise on X about the decarbonization issues in Europe and just the heat wave that's showing up. Absolutely. And there's this sort of conversation about American excess with air conditioning versus that. That's a very different market in trucking. Because they put a lot of pressure on emissions in Europe that we don't hear in the US. Well, best of luck, Diane. We're rooting for you. Bring home the gold.
Let's see it.
Let's see. I want to see videos of him training. The Rocky. Is there a better American film than Rocky? Speaking of American 250, I think that's the best. But the best line in that is, if he dies, he dies.
If he dies, he dies.
So, very good luck to our friend. We're rooting for you. Bring home the gold. Show the European competitors they got nothing on Americans, Diane. We're hoping for you. We'll be right back.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited, and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. You know, Malcolm, I've been thinking about America 250.
Yeah.
This is our 250th anniversary. We survived that long, which is a little surprising.
I mean, it is.
For all of the effort that we've tried to not survive and all of the internal strife and the chaos,
Yeah.
it does feel like America is at its best right now in terms of, like, there's a lot of American pride. We're seeing it. You know, Europeans are discovering American excess.
Shout out to Freddie.
Which is awesome, but you need energy. You need energy.
You need energy.
You need lots of energy to have American excess. And there's no better person to talk about American excess and energy than our next guest, John Kingston. He is the world's most respected energy reporter. But before we get into that, I got to talk, John Kingston. You did a story that we broke earlier today about C.H. Robinson, this U-turn lawsuit that they were named in, but it turns out they actually had nothing to do with the U-turn load. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, they said that right off the bat, that this is the famous U-turn, the U-turn case, the illegal immigrant from, I'm not, somewhere in South Asia, I don't know if it was India or somewhere else, who made a U-turn on the Florida Turnpike. Minivan plowed into him, 3 people killed. Just a terrible story. And of course, it also had lots of politics with it because it was an illegal immigrant. It was during the crackdown on immigrants holding CDLs. He had a California CDL. So it had all the politics mixed in it too. So the estate of one of the individuals that was killed filed suit against several people, including one very deep-pocketed defendant, C.H. Robinson. And C.H. Robinson, not even in a legal document, they put this out to me when I wrote the story, that there it is right there, that they had nothing to do with this. And they had looked over their records and they really did not know why they were being brought in as a defendant. Well, ultimately it took about 2 weeks or so, but they convinced the plaintiff that they were not a defendant, they should not be a defendant, and that they have been removed. Now, this is really, I think it's important because, you know, there's going to be a network or a body of post-Montgomery cases on broker liability. This one probably would have gotten a lot of attention just because the crash itself had gotten a lot of attention. Well, you know what? It's just a sort of, I hate to say normal, people died here, but it's kind of your normal tort over a fatal accident. There are no broker liability issues in this anymore. We're just kind of going to forget this one. I'm not saying forget it, but it just suddenly became not as important. Now, of course, the other case that C.H. Robinson is involved in is the original Montgomery versus Carib Transport 2 and C.H. Robinson. Presumably, I guess C.H. Robinson is back as a defendant after the Supreme Court case. There needs to be filings in that case on Monday back in the Seventh Circuit on what the parties intend to do. So that's obviously one to watch. There'll be others as well, but I think certainly the Florida U-turn case was going to be one that really brought in the question of what becomes of broker liability. We know there's going to be broker liability. You know, how much does a broker get held liable or negligent or whatever? And C.H. Robinson is now out of that case.
Yeah, it was like when you reported on this story, reading it, we opened the show with it. It had broken right before we went on air, so we didn't have it in the minute, the news lineup, but it was something that Malcolm and I discussed. I got to say, this is the most ridiculous thing that a plaintiff's attorney, well, that is saying a lot, because it's not the most ridiculous thing plaintiff's attorney's ever tried. It is ridiculous. The plaintiff's attorney is who filed this did not do their homework, because C.H. Robinson had nothing to do with it. And for whatever you think of C.H. Robinson, like, do your job, plaintiffs, and get it right. If you're going to go after companies and damage their name, make sure they have something to do with it. This didn't happen in this case.
Yeah, I mean, what's sort of amazing is that C.H. Robinson, after the case was filed, presumably sat him down and said, "Hey, look, where's your evidence that we had anything to do with this?" And the plaintiff's attorney obviously saw that there was no evidence and just let him go. I mean, you needed to have the case filed first to do that. And what kind of homework did you do in advance?
He did none. None.
No, let's face it, we know.
Did none.
None.
Like, didn't do his job. And it's unfortunate because there are situations where parties should be held accountable. Parties are going to be held accountable, but this is one that you damaged. Like, this is probably the most famous, if maybe this case and the one in Ontario, California that happened last year. That was that horrific accident where I think 5 cars were plowed by that guy. He either fell asleep or something, and just completely took out all these cars. Horrific case that we saw on camera. But this is a case that has become very, as you mentioned, John, very infamous because it was probably the first major political rallying call for the administration about the danger of non-domiciled CDL drivers and drivers that weren't fully compliant. And so this was something that all over the media became the poster child of it.
Yeah. I mean, it had everything, and it had an illegal immigrant. It had the whole California issue in Florida. I mean, you couldn't have scripted this better.
I mean, I wrote about it in the New York Times op-ed about the fact that there is no driver shortage, and this narrative is damaged by lowering the barriers to entry. This is a driver who actually had failed to take his first try at the CDL test, had actually failed it, and then was eventually issued a CDL. But he had no business being on the roads. It's just, this just drives me crazy if somebody has to report on it or has the opportunity to report on it because, again, the plaintiff's attorneys simply filed this, and there needs to be accountability for that. You can't just name somebody that has nothing to do with it. It's ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the problem now for the plaintiff is that I don't think that they've got a defendant with deep pockets. I mean, the carriers.
I mean, did they say, "Hey, Steve Robinson's the biggest, let's just go after them and name them"? That's ridiculous.
That's literally why.
I mean, it's debatable. I have yet to get a firm information about whether this carrier still exists.
Probably not, and that's probably what the.
If they do that, how rich can they be? Maybe they probably have your standard. If they were legitimate at all, they've got a standard minimum insurance contract. That's not going to be all that deep.
Now, it's been some time since I actually dug into this carrier, but I believe that the FMCSA was already investigating them, and there was this track record of just violation after violation, both applying to the driver and the motor carrier.
Yes.
To your point, John, there may not be anybody there to actually pay the lawsuit, and the plaintiff's attorney was trying to bring C.H. Robinson into this because, to your point, they have a lot of money, like they're the poster child. Are we going to see more of these types of frivolous bullshit lawsuits out there? And I said it. I did on record.
Yeah. Well, when I used to be on CNBC and Fox Business, people didn't say bullshit, but I just wanted to mention that. So this is a very new format.
This is a brand new format where we allow it.
I would think that this is so egregious, and C.H. Robinson smacked down these lawyers so fast.
Good.
That
they deserve it.
You would think that. I mean, maybe if there's a tenuous link somewhere, but C.H. Robinson must have shown that there's not even the most minuscule tenuous link to this crash, and that's why they were dropped. Because if there was any tie at all, they would have kept them in there.
If they were involved in it, we'd be having a very different conversation. If they were the broker record, we wouldn't be talking about how ridiculous this plaintiff's attorney did. They didn't do their job.
No.
But anyways.
Yeah.
All right, John, let's talk about oil. Let's talk about energy. Let's talk about Europe right now. They're really scorching high, and air conditions have become the American thing, whereas Europe apparently has decommissioned a lot of their energy, and there's this guilt that is applied. What is your perspective on the whole decarbonization in Europe versus the U.S.? What is your read on this as an energy reporter?
I think that they're dealing with the reality that it's a long, hard slog, that little steps can actually kind of go a long way. You do not necessarily have to try to go to net zero to still have some gains. I mean, the U.S. over the years has significant gains in its carbon intensity. And why? Because of the shale revolution, had a lot of natural gas that displaced coal. But at the other point I do want to make, though, is that 25% of all sales of autos worldwide are now EVs. before the Iran war, every single model of supply and demand for oil said the same thing, that there is that there is downward pressure, bearish pressure on the marginal barrel of oil because of EVs. That's significant. The fact of the matter is, for all the U.S. posturing against EVs, again, before the war, the price of oil worldwide, which means the U.S. as well, was lower than it would have been had it not been for a 25% penetration of new vehicle sales by EVs. So, you can have gains. You're probably just not going to get there by 2040 or 2050 net zero.
So, John, is that the reason that we didn't see? I mean, this is the largest oil crisis or bottleneck, if you will, since the 1970s. Is that the reason we only saw $115 barrel of oil was because of electric vehicles?
No, I think it's because we dumped out massive amounts of inventory. We had a lot of oil on the water that went out. We had strategic releases. The Chinese stopped buying. So to me, it's a just gigantic shift from secondary stocks into the main market. And this is why there are still a lot of bulls out there. The decline in oil notwithstanding, there are still plenty of bulls out there who think in the short term, maybe not into 2027, you're going to have some rough times. In the past week, where they're really starting to point to is this crazy crack spread between the price of crude and the price of products. And the view here is that the price of crude is really kind of off, that you should not have that. Ultimately, crude oil is a worthless commodity, right? There's only one thing you can do with it. You can turn it into products. If you've got this kind of product market, I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I did hear one analyst this morning saying that the what's known as the 3-2-1 crack spread, which is a very basic indicator of product strength and refinery margins, is at $50 a barrel. This is just like unheard of. And I mean, if you get $75 crude and you get a $50 crack spread, something is terribly wrong. And the bulls would say this is proof of their argument that crude is underpriced right now. Yeah, because you've dumped, you are suddenly getting this rush of crude that is coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. No, it's not coming out at the levels it was before, but it's still a lot of oil onto the market right now. And so that's depressing the price of crude, but the products market have not followed suit yet. So this is the bull argument right now.
So I got to ask, there was a lot of conversation about diesel, and I think Australia was struggling with diesel shortages. Throughout Asia, there was jet fuel shortages. I think the UK also suffered from jet fuel shortages at one point. I think Gatwick, perhaps, or Heathrow, I can't remember which airport, had run out or had threatened to run out, or was going to run out. Where are we at in terms of global diesel and jet supplies? Have we been able to restore those globally, or are they still struggling?
Well, no. One of the reasons they're going to be struggling even more are the successful Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil facilities. They've been going after the refineries. There's likely to be a ban on Russian diesel exports. They are a major supplier. There are gas lines apparently all over Russia. I actually saw a little video, I saw it on the internet, who knows how accurate it is, of violence on gas lines as people wait in Russia for that. So I think if you continue to take Russia out of the equation as a supplier, I don't think we're out of the woods at all.
And is that why? I mean, I did a report on Sonar. We're seeing international ocean container prices shoot up. Part of that is cost of diesel, marine fuel is certainly higher. How much of the price of diesel out of Asia is impacting ocean container movement prices?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna pass on that one because I really don't know. Sorry.
So, John, where do we go from here? What does the second half look like in terms of energy prices?
I continue to be kind of with the Jeffrey Curry camp. Jeffrey Curry is the longtime head of commodity analysis at Goldman Sachs. He was always very controversial, and he went out on his own a year or two ago. And nobody has been sounding the alarm more about supply problems coming out of the war than Jeffrey Curry. I will tell you that it is kind of difficult to find the Jeffrey Curry of the other side. I think Bloomberg has suddenly gotten kind of bearish. I know one of the guys over there is a guy named Mike McGlone, who I know, and he's talking about $40 crude, but he's talking about $40 crude next year. And I've seen those models too, that the supply and demand balance, if we can get kind of normalcy in the Strait of Hormuz, is very favorable for consumers next year. And that was what everybody thought going into 2026. And then, of course, that was all blown apart in February. So I still continue to believe that, we've got massive inventory refill that has to go on. We do not have anywhere near the Straits traffic back to normal. And remember something, the Strait of Hormuz just doesn't go one way. So even if a tanker goes out and offloads in China or Korea or wherever, if you're going to get back to normal, you got to bring it back to the Strait of Hormuz to a loading point in Iraq or Kuwait or wherever. And are the tanker owners going to be comfortable doing that yet? I don't really know that. I don't think that they are. So it's not enough to just look at how much oil is getting out. And it's not just oil, of course. It's fertilizer, it's petrochemicals, all sorts of things. But how much oil is getting out? But will these tankers come back? That I think is now the new question that's being asked. So I continue to be fairly bullish.
John, tell me, if Hormuz continues to have these quote unquote restrictions and issues, Q4, if you can make a prediction just off of a whim, what does that look like right now?
You mean in terms of price?
Yes, in terms of price.
Always terrible price forecaster.
As a reporter.
I think we can, I think we could test 100 again. I really do.
Okay.
So we're going to go the opposite direction. John, EIA's weekly report, as the industry knows as the DOE index, which is the fuel surcharge, comes out today. What is your read on where we're at in terms of fuel surcharge?
Well, it came out. Hang on a second. I'll get the number. All right. Because we got it here. Hang on a second. Okay, it came out today. It's a
live reading.
4.668. It's down 16.4 cents since it's down 8 weeks in a row. And since it started that 8-week trend, it's down 97.2 cents. So almost $1.
Yeah,
so,
which is interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just say the interesting thing about it is when the war started, I hadn't been tracking this data series, but I've been uploading the AAA diesel price every day. And those numbers are like totally different. I mean, they were the DOE number, of course, is weekly, but still, they should be kind of in the same area. They trend the same way. But the AAA price is about 20 cents higher, which is a huge gap. So I don't know whose methodology is off. But I don't know. I tend to go with a daily more than a weekly.
Have you looked at DTS on Sonar today, John?
Not today. No, I have not. I'm sorry.
So, but ULSD prices, which is the wholesale rack price, has actually dropped by about $1.60 a gallon. So retail, when I was looking at it yesterday, the retail price, the DTS.USA, only dropped by about 70 cents a gallon, where the wholesale price had almost doubled that. It's just an interesting dichotomy where the price for wholesale for rack has absolutely plummeted, reflecting that $70 barrel of oil, whereas in retail, it's come out, the air has come out very slowly.
Well, this is what Donald Trump is screaming about, and he talked about bad things were going to happen to oil companies. I mean, the fact of the matter is, let's remember how the supply works, is that the wholesale numbers will track very closely the futures numbers. They have to. We could do a whole show on why they don't have to legally, but they have to in terms of to run a business. The retail decisions are made by the retailers, by the independent store owners that own one store or 100 stores or 250 stores. Maybe the franchise holder of I was going to say Wawa. I'm not even sure if there's such a thing as a Wawa franchise, or they're all company owned, but whatever. So those decisions are made very much down on the ground. If you go into an Exxon station and the price is, $3.79 for a gallon of gasoline, nobody at Exxon made that decision. Where what the Exxon people did make a decision on is the wholesale price, and that does move with the futures price. And also kind of the physical spot market price when there's differences in that between the futures numbers and the physical numbers. So the individual retailers are the ones making that decision. And, they are loath to come down too fast. They like their numbers high, but eventually it's a competitive market and it gets there. But, when you've got this kind of crazy volatility, those kind of spreads you're talking about, that difference between the futures price or the wholesale price, which tend to move very closely in tandem, and the retail price, that spread tends to blow out. Eventually, over time, it returns to the norm. But we haven't been normal now for about 4 months. So
So DTS.USA, this is updated every single day inside of Sonar, which is the diesel truck stop. This is the retail price. As of this morning, is $4.91 a gallon. What did you say that the DOE is?
The DOE is 466.8, and that 491 is definitely a lot closer. The AAA number today is, give me a second. AAA number today is 485.3. So the DTS number is a lot closer to the AAA number. So right now, I would say, look, if I'm just based on that, if you've got a fuel surcharge against a DOE number around 466, but you're paying 485 to 490, that surcharge isn't doing you a lot of. I mean, I'm not saying it's not doing you any good, but it might be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said, and I think the best advice is be sure to buy your fuel on cost plus arrangements where you're benefiting from the price that ultimately the wholesalers, the retailers are actually paying versus a retail markup where you actually don't have a lot of control over that price.
That's a great point.
And interesting is the fuel stops will immediately, when prices go up, it's like a rocket. And when prices go down, it's like a feather. They're very slow to let the air out. We can see that. The fuel spread, by the way, this is in Sonar, fuels.USA, which is the retail to wholesale fuel spread, is at $1.59 a gallon. It peaked back in April at $1.90, almost $2 a gallon between the two. Now, that is not as high as we were back in 2022. This is the period of time when there was that really weird supply shock issue that was happening sort of in 22. And that was $2.20 a gallon. That's a record, by the way. But this is that spread is really historically a big number.
Absolutely.
You know who's going to benefit from that are the carriers that have fuel surcharges because they're buying at wholesale, buying their fuel at a wholesale price that's tied to this, and effectively reselling it at retail based on the Department of Energy index that comes out every week. John, got to get your last take. Lots of stuff happening around the world in terms of energy and this decarbonization story that's really plagued Europe. Do we think that reality is setting in? I mean, one of the biggest defensibilities of energy is the fact that regardless of whether climate change continues to cause havoc on the climate, and you can make that argument scientifically, and I certainly believe that it does, fossil fuels and energy is our best defense. And we've seen the fact that, I think it was like 1,000 people died in Paris the other day because of heat stroke, because of issues. It strikes me that that's sort of foolish that they didn't defend themselves with fossil fuels to protect themselves.
Yeah, I just reject the whole binary choice. I think that you can make significant gains in environmental issues and decarbonization at the same time that you're still acknowledging reality of what's going to make life better for people, which right now are fossil fuels. I'm sorry, but you're just not going to gain massive amounts by forcing people to move away from expensive fossil fuels and into something else. Look, I've been around this a long time. Every few years, the fossil fuel market, and particularly the oil market, is going to do something crazy. This last one is one of the biggest ones, but I've been there for a lot of others. And when that happens, it will tend to push progress toward like EVs or other things. Also, Craig, I think that you just did an interview with somebody about the TCO, the total cost of ownership of electric semis and just electric vehicles in general, continues to come down at a really relentless pace. And it's just going to make these things look, even you don't have to have $5 gasoline, but it's still going to make these things look really attractive when you throw in everything into it, in maintenance, in the initial cost, and the need to not have to change your oil all the time and tune up and everything. And I think the trend is going to continue toward electric vehicles. It's just not going to maybe happen as fast as some people want it to.
Well, look, FreightWaves Fight Club going to happen.
Oh,
John, you're going to be there. It's going to be, we're fighting over the Tesla semi for who gets to drive it. This is happening at F3, John. We're going to see you at F3.
All right, I'll be there. I drove the new Max Semi like 2 weeks ago, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be great. One thing that I rented, I have the same exact car. One's an electric version.
Okay.
and I rented, when I was in Utah, I rented the gasoline and the internal combustion engine. The thing that I noticed, John, was the acceleration on the electric vehicle was so much smoother and so much faster than it was in the internal combustion engine. And it, despite the climate issue and the cost, I actually enjoyed it better driving the electric, or I enjoy my electric car better than I do my internal combustion car. Just saying.
I mean, that's one thing about EVs. The people who use them tend to love them. They really do.
Yeah. Well, we'll be
I won't go through. I've had to buy 2 new cars in the last like 5 years, and I wish I'd bought EV for one of them. I'm sorry, no, I didn't.
Well, we'll be right back, and you can tell us all about it next time you buy a car, John Kingston. That is our energy expert. There's nobody that knows more, but we're going to talk to somebody who knows a lot about freight and freight markets coming up. We have David Spencer. He is the VP of Market Intelligence at Arrive Logistics. He's going to give us his take on the freight market in the second half.
Every load you move depends on one thing, knowing who's on the other side. And Highway gives freight brokers the carrier identity tools to verify carriers secure the load and book with confidence. The performance guarantee puts up $100,000 behind that promise. Real money behind the standard. No other freight technology company has made that commitment. This is, again, Highway, the standard for carrier identity.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
Well, we're going to go from one of the most volatile commodities to the most volatile commodity, which is freight markets and freight rates. David Spencer tracks this every single day. David, how are you?
I'm doing great, Craig. Thanks for having me. Malcolm, good to see you as well. Excited to be on the new show.
Yeah,
we're excited to have you. I mean, this has been, we've had so many great guests. We've had the opportunity to talk about this stuff every day. But our bread and butter is freight markets, and there's nobody better to talk about freight markets than you, David. Tell us, what are you seeing right now? I've called this the trucking Super Bowl because it happens every year. This is where the market really, really heats up. What are your thoughts on this week?
Yeah, this week, I think coming into this week, we're seeing demand all over the place, especially in the spot market. I think there's a ton of freight that needs to be moving. In mass, though, I think shippers are trying to avoid it as much as possible. We're already starting to see freight stack up well above a big day this week on Monday for next Monday already next week. So the demand boom looks like it's going to continue, at least on the spot side of things, as we look to stabilize on the backside of the holiday.
So, David, do you think the demand element is that shippers are just pushing freight into next week? Is it possible that next week will be even bigger in terms of volatility than this week?
Yeah, I mean, the baseline case here, right? If we're already seeing a little bit lower volumes Wednesday and Thursday into Friday, that's 3 full shipping days we're used to seeing that we're going to make up somewhere, right? And on top of that, you're looking at whether it's World Cup related, America 250 related, summer peak season. You got that heat wave across a large portion of the Midwest. I'm sure there's some additional volume in there that's going to be stacking up on top of that volume that we need to get through. That's going to be a little bit pent up here. So yeah, I think we're looking at probably a little bit longer on the backside of the fourth than what we'd typically be looking at, 1 to 2 weeks before we start to see that typical stabilization in late July.
You know, running freight, Malcolm, whenever you see high temperatures,
Yes.
you see huge beverage. There's it goes exponential. And it's all because people, get thirsty.
Come on now.
A lot of bottled water I
outside.
moved in.
It's hot outside.
Sodas that happen and beer that happened this time of year when things heat up. I would watch Texas. And you could make a huge rips on bottled water. You wouldn't make money on bottled water year round if you were an asset carrier. That's what the brokers are there to do the work for the bottled water companies.
For sure.
But those moments when there was really hot temperatures in Texas, man, you could make some real money making bottled water. It was absolutely legit. So, David, when we move into really the second half of the year, how much of this really holds? Are we going to see tighter conditions in the second half?
Well, I mean, this has been a supply-driven market disruption, right? And I think if you talk to the FMCSA, you talk to anyone on that side of the equation, the enforcement is not going anywhere, right? So the challenges, the headwinds to getting capacity or the supply side recovery going as we look to get a resolution here, it definitely doesn't seem like a short-term solution is in sight, right? I think from my perspective, you look at your guys' data on tender rejections, I think is the number one thing to point to here, that routing guides are clearly out of date. They're struggling to keep up with current rate levels. Right now, what we need to be talking about is that contract rate resetting higher. So shippers have a lot of work to do to normalize and stabilize their routing guides. And that's got to be the first step here to limiting demand in the spot market and giving carriers right now have so much opportunity to pick and choose, to name their price. Until we see contract rates reset higher here in mass, which I think we're starting to see. Shippers are definitely coming around. They're looking at that stable period in July, August as, Q3, early Q4 is a good time to find that rate floor and lock in that service that they're looking for, right? So that's the first step in my mind that should ease some of that spot demand, take a little bit of pressure off, but that supply side pressure I think is here to stay, and that's a headwind we haven't seen before in any market recovery.
Yeah, let's pull this chart up because I think it's really telling. Just we've got contract rates in spot. You can see in green just how electric the spot market has been, and I think some of the highest increases in terms of momentum in history in terms of spot rate increases. Contract rates have been very gradual. The slope is definitely up. To your point, David, feels like shippers are holding out, hoping that market and conditions for them improve, but we have a long way to go before we see contract rates really get in tandem with the increase we've seen in spot. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, even the ones that have been a little bit more hesitant to buy into what we're actually seeing, which is an inflationary market cycle, I think they're coming around now. Whether or not we see a contract rate reset here in the third quarter be enough, a lot of them are actually trying to shorten the term length to, that 6-month period, hoping that as we get past the end of the year peak season, that we're going to be in a better position to potentially capitalize on some more easing. We'll see where things go from that perspective. But I think we could be looking at over the next 6 months, 2 really significant increases on the contract side of the equation to get things to where they need to be before carriers have what they need in order to go out, replenish their fleets, add drivers, and really stomp out the fire here that is this cycle.
Now, David, first off, it's really good to see you. It feels like a different style right now. I had on a hat and I think a jersey last time I saw you on What the Truck, but
you're all getting nines on.
You're all buttoned up. I'm buttoned up. I have a question. So when it comes to this week, obviously this is the Super Bowl. This is a huge week in transportation. What are you telling your team and everybody else that arrived to prepare not only for clients, but just internally? What are those conversations like right now on the floor?
Yeah, it's a delicate dance, right? I mean, we've really made our name on being a strong provider of service on contract business. And this week, even with all the disruption, the high rates, we can't take our mind off of that, right? So it's all about, where do we need, to be from a contract tender acceptance point, right? And let's cut the line there, right? Let's hold to our commitments. And really, how do we service our customer beyond that, right? Still provide options, still provide support. But how do we balance that, deliver what we say we're going to deliver on, but also understand that this is a time to provide solutions, to provide coverage to our customers who we know are really struggling out there today.
It's a delicate balance right now because of obviously all the breaking news that we've covered. I mean, even with today, with this deal with CH and so on and so forth. I guess my next question is, when it comes to everything happening, right, and then also having a job to do, how do you make decisions with data and numbers and the infrastructure in hand? But then also you have to use it with logic with the things that are currently happening in the space as well.
Yeah, look, there's a short-term horizon and a long-term horizon, and the data is really going to help you on both of those fronts. The long-term horizon really is all about that contract pricing strategy, right? That's a big part of our book. We aim to be ingrained with the shippers that we're working with in a contract service perspective, right? So how do we continue to maintain and grow our book of contract business at sustainable rates? We're constantly thinking about where rates are headed. We're having those conversations with the shippers so that these rates that we're providing, it's not out of the blue. It's not us closing our eyes and throwing a dart. We're putting intelligence behind our pricing decisions. We're communicating those, thoughtfully and clearly and diligently with those that we're providing the pricing to, and driving those discussions, not just internally, but externally as well, about what's coming, how are we going to navigate these things the best way together so that, it's a win-win for both situations. On the short-term side of things, I mean, we have a group here that is absolutely religiously studying our load board, the trends. Where were we at this week for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, looking out in terms of volume, spread per load, how much is covered right now versus a week ago, how much money is in the load, what's our average price per mile. I mean, we're breaking down day to day all the details to understand how we push and pull some of the levers around, day-to-day spot quoting with our API integrations, contract tender acceptance, you name it. I mean, your guys' short-term high-frequency data has got to be the most valuable tool to helping us get perspective and confirming from the outside, what we're seeing day-to-day inside our business.
No, I want to put you in the seat because we are now about to be in Q3. Can you believe we're about to be in
I can't. This year is, I don't know, so much has happened.
I know.
But it feels like we've flown right through it. What do they say? The days are long and the years are short.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this market has felt like all year. Is so much has happened since the start of the year.
For sure.
Just in terms of the news, and we're, obviously covering the news. We're in it every single day.
Sure.
But it is kind of crazy.
It is crazy. I was just saying, being in Q3 and now for the back half of 2026, let's put you in the seat of a shipper. What are you looking at? What are the things that are, I guess, non-negotiables that you're just like, hey, these are the items that, as a shipper, I need to have when it comes to budgeting for the rest of my freight forecast in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about the shippers here. They've had a tough go at it, right? I mean, rates being given and 30, 60 days later being completely irrelevant, right? The conversations we're having right now, shippers are asking for, constant service, holding to a rate that we're providing for the length of this term. They're kind of getting to that point where, yes, we're accepting there's been some kind of shift in the market, but now that we're here, it's really important to us to understand what we have from a requirement standpoint around our service, around pickup, around deliveries, around consistency on tender acceptance for the rates that you guys are providing. It's a good opportunity where we're seeing a lot of consistency on the spot market to come in and actually provide a contract option for them as well. But again, it's all about fixing those routing guides. I think the less reliance you can have on the spot market today, the more consistency, stability, and less risk you're going to see in your overall supply chain. whether that's cost or even from a safety standpoint as well.
David, how accepted are shippers? You talked about the fact that they've had a rough go, but a lot of this, if we start earlier in the year, there was a sense of, I wouldn't call it denial, maybe is not the right term for it, but just a disbelief that the conditions in the market were completely flipping. But we've seen such momentum in this market, it's very unusual. But even our clients, that are Sonar clients, have been sort of slow to get on the fact that this has been a massive shift. A lot of these folks have never seen a market where carriers have the advantage. And of course, this is an unprecedented market conditions. Are shippers coming around to reality that they're going to have to pay significantly higher for capacity now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I look back at the first half this year, what's confusing is that in the annual cycle is really important because, outside of the disruptions we've seen, there's been relative stability, right? We look at Winter Storm Fern, that caused a big spike. So there was definitely a clear catalyst there that shippers could point to and say, oh, after the storm passes, we're going to see rates come back down. And to some degree, you did see some stability. And then the war in Iran kicked up fuel prices. And I think we lost that month of March, a time where you typically see stabilization in the cycle, to carriers adjusting their line hauls to make up for in the spot market where fuel had gone to. Throughout April, again, another traditional slow period, we saw stability. And I think that lulled everyone back to sleep and not quite really a chance to grasp what was really happening on the supply side of the equation. The true need for a higher rate per mile to deal with the elevated cost of operation and the reduction in capacity on the carrier side of the equation. And then when we finally hit road check week in May, a couple straight weeks of disruption and normalization there again. But you even have those few that will point to those 2 weeks in June where things kind of softened up just slightly and say, hey, every time the market calms down from one of these disruptions, we're getting out of it. That's kind of how I think about the back half this year, right? Anytime we've seen these disruptions or these pinch points or when you see that spot rate volatility, that's going to continue to create pressure here. I think shippers are seeing it, and they're certainly coming around to the idea that, full network RFPs off cycle are not something that they should be considering a problem right now. That's really a solution.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about June. I mean, it's interesting because we had such strong momentum. Some of the biggest gains in history really took place in the month of May, but particularly those last 2 weeks, we're headed into Memorial Day. And then the market sort of paused. It wasn't as if things collapsed because we're still, we were above 15% tender rejections the entire period. We were still near all-time highs in spot rates. We didn't see continued increase in momentum. Now we're back to a holiday that's going to be a catalyst, that always is. Do we enter July? You talked about freight being stacked, which is a great thing, bodes well for the next couple of weeks. But do we think we're going to see higher new levels of tender rejections and new rates that are going to likely to sustain in the second half? Or do we think things will cool off as we head into August, which is traditionally a really, one of the slower months of the year?
Yeah, just looking at the pattern recognition from my end, it's really been the disruptions that have been the pain points where we've seen that rate elevation, whether it's tender rejections or rate per mile. And when we've entered these seasonal lulls that we're used to seeing, typically we would be expecting rates to come down. We haven't really seen it come down either. It's kind of like, where is that new floor going to settle in at? And I think July and August is going to allow us to see where that stable rate floor is at. Certainly I think the peak season in Q4 is going to offer another round of rate increases. And part of the reason why I think shippers who are looking at that 6-month term, might regret trying to do that as much as possible. I guess it does put them in a position to maintain their contract acceptance and their routing guides with new pricing early in Q1. But I think, there's not much when you look at that typical cycle for the freight market between July and Thanksgiving. Yes, there's Labor Day. Yes, there's back to school and, fall retail, but, nothing that really kind of shakes things up like July 4th or summer peak. And so I think that's a period where we're going to see some stability. I don't think that means, however, we're going to see massive rate declines or a shift back to deflationary environment or anything like that. Like I said early on in the show, I still think the supply side pressures are going to be too great for any recovery in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where the catalyst is. We've had Dr. Jason Miller on the show. We've had Ken Adamo. They both talked about the fact that the cycle was going to peak sometime in late 27. Well, I'd love to get your take, David. Do you think this cycle goes on longer, or do you think we're going to repeat history and, in 12 to 18 months, we're going to sort of peaked out?
Well, carriers always seem to find a way, huh? I mean, this industry's been pretty undefeated in finding ways to add capacity amongst these headwinds. Certainly, you had the physical shortages of semiconductors throughout COVID that really limited how fast equipment can come back on the road. But there's real serious questions about where this driver pool is going to come from, right? I mean, you could look at the housing market and say, hey, with potential interest rate hikes on the horizon, housing's probably not going to be back in 27. And so do you look at laborers from that market as a potential source of drivers? I mean, you start going down and pulling these threads, then you're looking at another challenge in the driving school aspect of things, right? With all the driving school closures, how quickly can you get new drivers into the market? When you put all these pieces together, I think it's hard to imagine an environment where over the next year we're talking about anything year-over-year deflationary, especially with the kind of rate jumps that we saw throughout May and into early June this year. I think we're talking about at least another year here before that's even possible, in my mind, for rates to be negative year-over-year.
I mean, you make a great point, and every time I've heard in my life, and I've been around this business my whole life, is this time is different. It always inevitably isn't, and carriers, as you say, always find a way to correct the market, and in many ways overcorrect the market, and we sort of end up in the same cycle. The difference, and this is my argument, is that immigration, ultimately, it's the driver availability, the population of truck drivers that have really the capacity constraint, not the number of trucks that are being produced, but the drivers themselves. Where are the drivers coming from? We have crackdowns at the federal level in terms of new compliance rules. We have the states themselves getting even more strict. We just talked about DeSantis and the CDL bill of letting ex-cons, he vetoed the bill did not sign the bill that was approved by the state representatives in Florida. It strikes me that, and then you've got all the different legislation, the Supreme Court decision, and we know what's on the agenda for the FMCSA. They're not done. They're just getting started, as Derek Bars likes to say. Where are these drivers going to come from?
Yeah, that really is the big question, right? I think there is some thoughts that, look, a lot of the drivers that left over the past couple of years, how quickly could they re-enter the marketplace? Is there latent capacity out there? Yeah, to some degree, the answer is probably yes, right? But it really all depends on what we see from a demand environment. We could be chasing a moving target here. The manufacturing economy has been in significant expansion. When you look at that PMI readings, we're not doing another print until tomorrow, but last month, you saw only 2% of the sector's GDP was in contraction. That's broad-based growth across manufacturing. Consumer spending has held up strong. The labor market has been doing well. There's an incredible amount of money and consumer spending going on right now. And, I think demand it has potential to see upside as well. So even if we do find those drivers, we could be running up to or chasing a growing demand environment as we look into next year too.
Yeah, and as your point, housing hasn't even participated really in this market. And it is the largest single driver of freight demand as a category. And it's really sort of slept on this entire market upswing. If we get a housing bill, the president has, I don't know what we're at on that. I haven't seen the news in the last 48 hours on whether he's going to sign it or not. But if we get a housing bill, that could actually increase demand for trucking services.
Absolutely.
Builders are building homes, but people are not buying homes, which is creating a problem because we're not, furniture and appliances and stuff. That strikes me as the big catalyst or the big wild card is this demand situation. If we get housing to come back, it's going to pull labor into the housing market because the immigration story is not just a trucking story, it's also a construction story. Yep. There's going to be a lot of competition for labor. Again, I don't know where these drivers are going to come from. And there's no doubt that the government, the DOT and the FMCSA is studying this market and frankly watching the economics of this industry because they want a healthy industry. They want to know that the industry is doing well. The FMCSA only regulates the trucking companies. That is their primary job, to regulate trucking companies. And they're watching the rate environment to see that the health of the market is solid as a determination of whether they're doing their job.
Yeah, I mean, and in terms of the health of the trucking companies, I mean, even what we've seen from a rate environment hasn't necessarily, pulled everyone out of the tough environment that they've been in the past few years, right? So, the FMCSA is ensuring the roads are safe. They're looking after these trucking companies. Rate environment is increasing, but we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, the last few years have been pretty tough on trucking in general. I mean, that's part of the reason for why we saw the impact we did, even when fuel jumped like it did this year. Adding capacity is hard enough as it is with these driver headwinds, but you have to think about back offices being depleted, recruiting departments being completely obliterated, right? I mean, most of these trucking companies were absolutely cost cutting, and cutting every corner that they could to make things work. And so, you add in some of the additional, headwinds they've seen this year. Increased cost of insurance, the increased cost of equipment, especially next year with the low NOx emission standards going into effect. It's not getting any cheaper or easier to run a truck.
No, and look, I heard last week talking to some of the largest carriers that, again, have all of the advantages, have a good reputation, frankly, regardless of X, because they won't go on record and say about how tight it is, but they've told me it's the tightest driver market in history. These are carriers that have been around for decades. Finding drivers is very difficult, and that is the governor on capacity. And it's hard to make a case, David, that we're going to see that increase. I have no doubt that eventually this market will figure it out. Eventually it will correct. I just can't imagine it's going to happen anytime soon.
That's a big question. How high and how long? I think that's what we're all trying to figure out.
Well, we all can get humbled by trucking because it always does. It is a very volatile, surprising market.
Always.
David, we're going to have you back. Appreciate your insights as always. You are a man with the pulse. I don't know that there's a smarter analyst in freight. David would certainly be one of the smartest out there.
David Spencer is what they call a God's guy.
And what he does that I love is he's very outspoken. He says his mind. He argues, but he has no ego in. He has no ego in the sense that as he's drawing conclusions to the market, he's always learning. And I think one of what makes him effective, and really anyone who's an effective analyst, is your models have to be constantly moving. Absolutely. We are always on air, and we're public record. Everything we say is public. Every single day we're talking about this, and that's an unfortunate reality. Is like sometimes you have to play the buck back. You have to play the tape back. But David's always someone who's not too proud to admit that when new data comes in, that's what this market takes, and it is the most volatile market on the planet.
It is. David's awesome. He's fantastic.
Well, appreciate David. We'll have you back tomorrow on FreightWaves Today. We have a packed show.
Oh wow!
This is July 4th weekend.
This is fireworks galore.
This is the Super Bowl freight. We have Ted Bassett, the founding president of the Association of Interstate Trucking Lawyers. Oh man. Trucking Lawyer Plaintiff of America. Plaintiff Interstate. How do I say that?
Plaintiff Interstate Trucking Lawyers of America.
Plaintiff Interstate Trucking Lawyers of America. Oh man, I got to ask him about the Steve Robinson nonsense.
Oh yeah, tomorrow. That's
one of his own messed it up. We will hear from Andy Engardio, Managing Director of Transportation at Gallagher. I'm gonna hear about all of the insurance stuff.
Yeah.
We gotta listen to that. Niles Oppenheimer, he is the Chief Revenue Officer at Coverwell. Trucking insurance tomorrow is a legal and insurance conversation. And my favorite Dave of the week, and one of my favorite guests, Bill Stevens, the editor of Trains Magazine, will join us at noon Eastern to talk about the American Association of Rail Report. And I've talked about how important this report is, because what it does, Malcolm, is it gives us a sense for what's happening outside of trucking.
For sure.
Because it's oftentimes hard to interpret the volume we see, how much of that is really related to just the gain share between contract and spot. Is this related to the lack of capacity? The great thing about the rail report, particularly when we look at bulk, intermodal is important, but I kind of ignore the intermodal data typically. Yeah. I'm looking at the bulk data because the bulk data tells us about the industrial economy. And tomorrow we're going to go over it. It's every single Wednesday. You can catch us at FreightWaves Today at noon to 2 daily. You can also catch us on Road Dog at 6 p.m. on your ride home. Thanks for joining us.